Hello, I am Natasha Mascarenhas, reporter at TechCrunch, and today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence's impact and potential on K through 12. It can either raise a red flag when it comes to data or privacy, or it can change lives when it comes to technology that understands things like reading comprehension and personalized learning, especially in a distance learning world. To help make sense of it all, I have brought together an all-star panel, and I'll introduce them now. First up, we have Chen, the U.S. Chief Investment Officer of TAL Education, which is a Chinese holding company that works on after-school tutoring programs for primary and secondary school students. We have Michael Connor, Superintendent at Middletown Public Schools, which is based in Connecticut. We have Brian Thomas, CEO of Lightspeed Systems, provider of solutions that are used in schools around the world for things like web filtering, device management, reporting, student safety. So a lot to talk there. And finally, last but not least, we have Malkin, the CEO of Carnegie Learning, which provides curriculum, textbooks, math learning, and software for grades 6 through 12. Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
This will be fun. I mean, AI is a black box, so any strides we make on understanding it more will be a service well done. But on that note, any questions that audience members have while we're chatting, make sure to ask them in the Zoom Q&A function. I will start looping them into our conversation about 20 minutes in. Just make sure you're kind, not overly pitch-esque, and then I'll make sure to bring them up for our esteemed panelists. I think that's all the housekeeping we have. So I'll jump into the first question, which is getting into the nuts and bolts of where we are right now when you hear the words AI and K through 12. Barry, I'll start with you. Talk to me a little bit about Carnegie Learning. Tell us about your company, and then tell us where we are more broadly when it comes to innovation in AI for kids in K through 12.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. So Carnegie Learning was the brainchild of Carnegie Mellon University about 20 years ago. They developed the first intelligent tutoring system on the market, and it was, needless to say, way before its time. Over the past 20 years, we've had amazing partnerships with both public and private organizations to really perfect and improve and build upon the original adaptive learning and artificial intelligence engine that Carnegie Mellon University created. And today we're broadening our product line beyond mathematics. We just acquired scientific learning a couple weeks ago to get into and deeper into the literacy field as well. But for us, artificial intelligence and technology driven learning is really the heart and soul of what we do. It's our company's DNA. And we are incredibly excited by the power of AI and the possibilities that it can bring to improving student outcomes through our technology platform. And I think we're just getting started. I think we're really beginning to leverage data in new and unique ways, and that's ultimately what artificial intelligence is driven by. And I feel very strongly that we'll be able to have a profound impact, a transformative impact on results in K-12, even beyond what we've done to date.
For those of us who maybe aren't familiar with what results and outcomes really mean, can you kind of give me the quick definition of what you're referring to when you say that?
We're looking at one thing, which is improving student outcomes. That is all we focus on. That is our mission in life as an organization, is to improve student outcomes, and we do that through great content. We also do it through technology. And the other thing we do is we work with the teachers, not against the teachers. Our artificial intelligence and the data that we produce is meant to differentiate instruction in the classroom in a very effective and efficient manner. It's very easy to give a lot of data to a lot of individuals. It's another thing to be able to interpret that data and to be able to create
economics where there's a lot of demand. Right now, what we're doing in Middletown Public Schools, and of course, building community capacity, civic capacity around artificial intelligence, is we're starting to integrate AI into our standardized operating model, which is our instructional model in the education sense, where that now, since COVID has had this cataclysmic impact on our ecosystem, now to be able to curtail those equity gaps or the achievement gaps, the loss of learning gains, and the time that was out of school, the face time, of course, AI gets to that level of personalization and precision where you can couple it now within a blended learning environment, whether it be face-to-face online instruction and working in the synonymous context, whether it is the whole group rotation or station rotation, or even creating individual playlists that can be done in an asynchronous manner. Now you're closing equity gaps because the machine learning is getting to the zone of proximal development of every single student. So if you have that working along with the practitioner or teacher providing that high quality instruction that's differentiated, where data and analytics are providing that to the teacher because of the AI, then now you're actually accelerating learning within classrooms. But again, you have to build civic capacity and build families capital around AI and the need of why artificial intelligence should be incorporated into the schools and the classrooms.
So let me jump here. So you asked the question like how parents are acting towards technologies, especially AI technologies. Actually, the parents I have met, actually, most of them are aware of the importance of technologies. They have seen there are more and more smart classrooms equipped with the technologies, or maybe already AI technologies, which help teachers and the students have better understanding about each other, and they can do better teaching and learning, provide better teaching and learning experience. And the AI technologies have already showed them the results that they can make it possible for personalized learning, which will fundamentally change how education is delivered and make education more accessible, more relevant, more efficient and effective. And also, since the students of today will need to work in the future where AI is the reality, so the parents, they know that it's very important that our educational institutions expose the students to the AI technologies and teach them how to use those technologies starting from an early age. So in China, parents, especially in China, parents are willing to get themselves and get students exposed to those technologies. And they are also willing to pay for their children to get those kind of like more efficient, effective education, which is powered by AI technologies.
Joy, it kind of sounds like you're saying something, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, similar to the rest of ed tech more generally, that's kind of accelerated during the pandemic. I think you hear we've moved 10 years in 6 months. That's trickling down to AI, at least from a sentiment perspective. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, say the question again, like from the parent side, or?
I guess I'm just curious if AI has kind of gone from being a nice to have tool to a necessity for parents and for schools, like so many other ed tech tools have during the pandemic.
Okay, I won't say it's going to be a necessity from the parents' perspective, but they have already seen AI is booming in education area in China, and also they have heard so many things from the government side, from the school side. We all know government in China is trying to make a national push to develop AI technology, and education is a very important industry to develop and do more research around AI technologies. And also, since we have large quantity of students' data, which is available for AI research and development, we have seen a lot of like technology startups and the companies have worked around those data and tried to also they have the flexibility to experiment with new technologies. So they have seen a lot of like AI technologies applications in education. So they are getting kind of like used to knowing the new technologies, new applications might be coming and might be helping their students. So they are willing to try. I'm not saying they are a necessity, but if there are good products being available, empowered by AI technology, parents and also educators, especially from China side, they would like to give it a try.
And Natasha, I just want to emphasize one thing that Joyce said that I think is critically important. In China, artificial intelligence is a national priority. They're investing in the field and the sector with zeal, and that's an advantage they have. The other advantage they have is that they have more data and more access to data than we have in the U.S. for a variety of reasons, and that data is ultimately what will drive advances in artificial intelligence and more robust applications. And I think it's something to watch, and that's why in many respects I think the Chinese companies have a bit of an advantage. I also think that there's also just a lot of bluster in this industry about artificial intelligence, and unfortunately I think it's used very loosely in our industry, and there are few companies who are really using data in any real or meaningful way to inform instruction and student learning. And it really is, I think, working against this industry in many respects, because it's all talk and no action in a lot of these applications.
And Natasha, I want to underpin what Barry specifically stated, because, in the K-12 space, artificial intelligence is becoming kind of like this buzzword. But I think that what we have to do now is have to move CEOs or superintendents out from this BATS institutionalization lens, where it's value change, where now you have to be able to incorporate artificial intelligence, use data and analytics. But now, because of COVID, we have to shift towards this design thinking around integrating artificial intelligence into the actual instructional architectures of K-12 systems. So now, AI, how to use that data, and there's not enough data in K-12, right? When we talk about the utilization or underpinning big data, there's not enough, because usually we just use it on a very linear or unsupervised manner. But when we want to start conducting those predictive analytics or move into data science around random trees, random forest or decision tree analysis, there's not enough data to be able to identify or target segments of students to close equity gaps, to look at the improvements of the instructional model within K-12, or even build in a vertical architecture where now students are, there's no grades. It's just more really personalized and precise to students. So I think what Barry stated is that we need more data in the K-12 space, but also have a true understanding of what artificial intelligence is and how to incorporate it into our broader structure of education.
Michael, don't you think maybe the parents and the teachers don't need to necessarily understand artificial intelligence or even know that it is artificial intelligence, but if we're doing a really good job on learning outcomes and showing them impacts and feeding them the results of that artificial intelligence in a smart way, it's more valuable. What I'm finding is you're absolutely correct. There's not enough data being collected, and there's too much talk of how we're ingesting and delivering that data back. I think the learning outcomes, predictive analytics, even the ability to show impacts. Is Zoom with Carnegie Learning impacting our school in a positive way? And showing just that simple answer to the decision makers is a really powerful way to prove it. And artificial intelligence is good.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask, I think there's obviously two buckets, and I want to know about the power more. I think we need some more tangible use cases. So can any of you kind of weigh in about kind of like the aha use case that gets parents, gets partners on board, that really underlines, beyond using the word outcome or impact, what is like genuinely something we can learn from AI when it's applied well in a classroom?
Yeah, from our perspective, it's been the focus company since we founded it. It was around student safety, and so the mental well-being of a student and their physical safety is probably the most powerful answer I could give you there. Meaning, if we're collecting a lot of really great data on a student, remember, a student doesn't have a thought that they don't type into a device, and you're collecting their behavior and their data, and you do it in a really thoughtful way, in a predictive way, before they get really sad or things get really bad for them. and you can deliver that back to the counselor or the guardian or whoever it may be to interject and improve that student's mental health and life. That is not about an outcome. It's not about an impact. It's not a lot of buzzwords. It's truly saving children's lives. And so for me, that's top of mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example from a curriculum standpoint. I'll characterize it this way. So if a student is deficient in a particular area of content, the typical remediation is to bring them way back and have them begin anew. And what we're able to do with our data is to really understand what are the relevant prerequisite standards and skills that could be manifesting itself in the student having a difficulty with this given content. And so instead of remediating everything over the last year and a half to get the student back to grade level, we can focus in on the real deficiencies and the cause of those deficiencies, as opposed to overwhelming them with more content and moving them back a year. And so that's really, really powerful in so many respects. It improves ROI for institutions, for public school systems, and obviously allows the student to remain on grade level and helps the teacher with differentiation.
Yeah, I mean, we also believe that education is where AI holds huge promise with big potential, and definitely data is the key to reach the goal. And I agree with some of the things you just mentioned. The data privacy is very important. We definitely need to consider how to protect the data and how to share with the students and their parents the value proposition, why we need to collect data and what data to collect and how will we collect them and use them. And also one example I want to share with you guys, one of our use cases is a solution we called WizRoom. So actually many of you may know, like a couple of years ago, Chen has established our AI lab. Our AI also brings science lab, and we teamed up with universities as well as world-leading AI scientists and top talents in education. So our lab has developed this AI-powered application called AI Classroom with Room. So it collects a lot of data from the students, actually real-time data, as well as like after class, after school kind of data. So we aim to realize the personalized learning by providing excellent teaching for every class and giving personalized attention to every student. So it has the capability to instantly adjust the teaching method and the content based on the intelligent evaluation and the feedback we get from the classroom. So we try to leverage innovation of cutting edge technologies such as computer vision. We also do voice recognition and interaction. We also do curriculum optimization. We do question recommendations with large question bank. So I think schools and educational institutions, we need to do a better job to provide a clear and understandable value proposition to the students and their families, and tell them after data have been collected, have been analyzed, and have been used, how well it will show from the outcome side, the students' learning outcome side.
And Joy, you're absolutely right, and Barry had hit on it, is that, we here in Middletown are conducting a variety of experiments, some really strong study designs on developing some hypotheses, testing out and doing the actual learning for an attentional scale. And the AI solution that we're using, it has a strong component where we're identifying those priority standards, and specifically what Barry stated is to unwrap those priority standards to get to the prerequisite skills, providing that level of precision and personalization to the students. So ultimately, you'll have hypothetically 15 different lessons going on with the individual students because the AI is personalized. But on the front end, the student is engaged, right? And that's what I think is the key, is the level of engagement that the student is with the AI, and then also the adaptability within the AI as well to provide that information to the teachers so they'll be able to differentiate accordingly within their classrooms. So we're seeing that right now. Joy talked about a value proposition. We say a theory of action in education, and we're actually looking at what the impact is and how it's impacting practices and student achievement simultaneously. So again, if you get to that level of precision, especially now the impact of the novel coronavirus, that we have to get to that level of personalization and differentiation in all of our classrooms because of the loss of learning gains and the accelerated achievement gap that this pandemic has created.
Yeah, Michael, let me kind of put you on the spot a little bit here because obviously you're a superintendent. You're making a lot of the decisions and having these conversations around the people that might be the hardest to convince, whether that's other people that are controlling the budget or parents. And so I'm curious, when you're looking at certain tools to bring on or not, how do you separate the companies that are, as you said, walking the walk versus talking the talk when it comes to these use cases?
Yeah, research, right? I play this two-folded role where, I'm incorporating data and analytics and using specific core competencies to build that within the organization, but also guiding or underpinning it with research and using what some of the broader research is saying, whether it be various white papers or scholarly text or whatever it might be, to really ground the literature in our decision making. But it's not this implementation of like an ideas de jour where we're just implementing research because it's stating that, but we're incorporating the data and the analytics and selling the outcomes. Doing an analysis for return of investment, right? If we're spending X dollars with this and student achievement is showing why, this is what we're actually gaining in the context of a dollar amount, right? So we have to be able to adjust our register and our vernacular to what I like to call our most important customers, our parents and our students, and our most important practitioners, which is our instructional leaders and our teachers that are in the classroom. So it's just around how we're able to create this analogous relationship between literature, research, as well as data and analytics to be able to drive the systems change or even a classroom change if we want to get to a granular sense.
Okay, got it. Brian, you said something earlier that was interesting, which was that, maybe part of this conversation could be parents want those solutions for their kids, but they don't want the word AI. Can you talk to me a little bit more about different solutions to get maybe mass adoption, if mass adoption isn't something we don't yet have?
Right. I don't even know that they don't want the word AI, but they want to understand that their students' data is private and it's protected. And, in K-12, there's quite a few really great rules put in place to make sure that's true. And vendors like ours, integration with the student information system, which is a very safe and protected area for the students' data, and making sure that people understand that they're following those rules is key. And then I think, counter to what Joy said, there's a lot of people who don't understand any of this. Okay, I'm not just talking about artificial intelligence. I'm talking about how the device works, how to log into Zoom. We saw major gaps, right, and don't have connectivity. So I think being able to provide, for instance, parental reports. This is where your student is compared to others of the same age across your state. This is where your student is trending on any particular subject. These are the applications that are most effective and most equitable at your school. It could be Khan Academy, it could be Carnegie Learning, it could be all these great pieces of content and curriculum that are out there. But I think everyone needs to better understand, compared to what, is it getting better? Is it staying the same? Are we improving? And how is my student performing compared to where we expect them to be? Michael talks about the gaps we just created with the COVID, and that'll be another great time for us to do a really good job on AI. If we do a really good job there, maybe we can make up for those gaps quicker.
Yeah, let me also bring up my last big question before we hop into audience questions, which is, as you said, Brian, like, people don't get it. And my response is like, a lot of people also don't even have the opportunity to get it. They might not have the devices in their homes or the Wi-Fi access. And so I think the pandemic has obviously really highlighted our digital divide. And so I'm curious where you all are at optimism-wise, thoughtfulness wise towards if AI is something that is either exacerbating the digital divide or kind of closing it up? I'll ask maybe Barry to start.
Yeah, well, I think COVID-19 is going to have a profound impact on the structure of K-12 education, and the biggest gap I think we had pre-pandemic was the availability of broadband and the availability of devices. I think a lot of work and a lot of money and resources have been spent recently since the pandemic became a reality to improve that situation. And so I do think that you're seeing a lot more devices in a lot more students' hands, which is going to be a huge benefit for K-12 education. And I think that is going to be a catalyst to really understand the advantages of technology and what you can do with it. So I'm optimistic. I do think, though, that the crisis has also laid bare the complexities of public education and really the challenges that leadership have of managing such a complex organization. And so these are tough questions and tough answers. But I think that a lot of advances will materialize as a result of this crisis, and I'm very optimistic that we're going to see a lot more adoption.
Yeah, Barry, absolutely, because from my lens as a superintendent, it's all about equity, right? To eliminate inequities within students, no matter where you're at, no matter where you're starting from, no matter your socioeconomic background or status. My goal was to ensure that every student was provided what they needed to be provided, and we would provide the pedagogy as well as the digital tools to be able to leverage and democratize student achievement here. We have our definition, our vision around that. But again, I think that the pandemic exacerbated the inequities. It just made it more profound for everybody to say that, yes, this has been existing in education, especially within the traditional structures and systems of education that we've been living in. But now, because of the pandemic, it's just more prevalent to us as leaders and teachers. So I think that now we have to be able to use artificial intelligence as a tool to be able to support pedagogy and the specific capital, human capital, around how we're able to ensure that all students can be accelerated simultaneously. So yes, there are many complexities and challenges, but I think that this is a time for opportunity to be able to refine and reimagine what education looks like.
Just to put a finer point, I think it's really important on what you just said. I'm in a position where I get to see schools across the country, and I get to see wealthy suburban districts and struggling urban schools, and the inequities that exist in K-12 public education is remarkable, right? And if anything, I think this crisis, maybe it will start to bridge that gap a little bit, but the resources available to the haves versus the have-nots is extraordinary. And I do think this is an area where artificial intelligence can really play a positive impact. We're not trying to replace teachers, we're trying to augment teachers. But in those communities that are devoid of resources, this is a tool, this is a technology that can really help provide a resource to education that they don't have in the form of human capital. And so I'm really optimistic that this is gonna help solve some of those challenges. Not overnight, but ultimately.
And also I want to say technology will not only get better, but also cheaper. I think in the near future, those from the underprivileged families could be able to enjoy AI-powered education at an affordable price, maybe help from government, nonprofit organizations, or maybe from the local school systems. And I think, yes, we may have a long way to go to achieve that goal, but I think to make sure that they will come as soon as possible, we should work closely and together at a global level to find a way to seek the equitable solution to make sure that students from everywhere can have universal access to education. I think we should do more sharing, collaboration like this, learn from each other's best practices, and come up with the innovative learning solutions, leveraging, I think, maybe not only AI technologies, but some other high-tech, low-tech, maybe even no-tech approaches to ensure the continuity, inclusion, and equity of learning for all students, especially those from the vulnerable and the disadvantaged communities.
I'm going to start bringing in some audience questions, and then we're about 10 minutes to ending. And Joy, I'm going to start with you. An audience member asked if AI will increase education expenses for parents. You kind of just alluded to how it's going to get cheaper over time. But the second part of that question is, you know, in the near term, do you think AI will focus mostly on the high-end, wealthy, upper middle class market?
To be very transparent, I think for the time being and maybe for the next few years, it might happen in that way. It is happening in that way. But as I mentioned, the technology will get cheaper. And if we, like the school systems, government, and companies like us, and also some nonprofit education organizations can work together, come up with some solutions to help those student families. They are like from the underprivileged communities. I think there will be some ways to help them at the time being to have access to the education programs, applications powered by AI. But I think there need to be the efforts from different parties within this ecosystem. Only by the expense, by the family, especially from the poor family, I don't think it's going to happen. So I think the whole society need to come together, work together, and find solutions to accommodate those students.
And Natasha, I just wanted to follow that up, because also too, I think that from the superintendent or CEO lens, it has to be a part of the organizational strategy or the strategic plan of the district. So if the superintendent or CEO is investing in artificial intelligence, and if it's a part of the core architecture or the prototype within their organization, then they'll be able to repurpose specific or allocated funds to close in equities, as well as to invest strategically in artificial intelligence. One thing in Middletown, what we did was we started to invest in AI as well as professional capital capacity to work in blended environments. So that's how we were able to leverage that. And we're not a suburban district. We're an urban district. We're 50% free and reduced students. So, you know, it's all about the investment, and it's all about how the plan or the vision is driving the plan.
Natasha, I'm even more optimistic, I think, than the other two, in that we partner with about 7,000 districts, and all of them, every single one of them has equity at top of mind. And every vendor that I'm aware of, that I work with, has got artificial intelligence, machine learning, and improving at top of mind. And so we're not going to charge any more for it. It's not going to change our pricing model. We're just going to invest in making it much, much better for our school district partners and superintendents, CTOs. And I think the financial equitable challenge at this point is connectivity. Because I think we're going to get, you know, for all the bad things that come from this pandemic, it's rapidly accelerated, at least America's interest in getting to a one-to-one device for every student. And that should be not a student-owned device, because that's not equitable. One that the school has provided, that's connected to the internet, and has the appropriate software on it, and can provide all this great content to make really good, impactful decisions based on artificial intelligence. So I think it's faster and more equitable than ever now. And people are leaning in, like Joy asked or suggested. So I'm very optimistic.
Let me add another question here. Someone asked if there are any regulations around privacy that may be preventing the US from having the same massively successful AI-driven learning platforms that China has.
In K-12, the compliances that I'm aware of, and Michael can interject, I'm sure, is the COPA compliance and CIPA compliance are very critical. The Child Online Protectancy Act and student data privacy pieces. So a lot of this has been built in for 20 years to make sure that student data doesn't leave the district. It doesn't get into the wrong hands. So I think collecting data has been happening for a very long time, low tech, no tech, high tech data. And it's been well protected because public schools in the United States have done, and Western Europe have done a great job of protecting it. Everybody understands that's a top priority. And so I'm not aware of anything that's preventing us from collecting really good data that we can make artificial intelligence decisions from.
Yeah, so a listener kind of asked kind of on that question that, you know, are ed tech companies thinking about developing universal standards for sharing like around data so people can learn and develop from, or is that a mistake?
Yeah, so we even though we are a private for-profit organization, we do a lot of grant work. And one of the projects that we're doing is a project called Upgrade, which is a A/B testing platform for education. And it's supported by the Gates Foundation and the Schmidt Foundation. And portions of that will be available in open source for the community to leverage. So we're doing a lot of work around data, shared data and data sets that will become available for others to benefit from.
Brian, I saw you kind of laughing along. Any thoughts there?
Whoever asked that question has their thumb on the pulse of the biggest problem. As I see it, is there is not a standardized good way to consolidate all of that data. So you know, Lightspeed and lots of other vendors are trying to be the ones to collect as much data as they can in the safest possible way, and then feed it back to the district in the best possible way. And if at all possible, collect data without the cooperation of all the other systems on the network, because there are so many. You know, there's been studies recently, Michael could tell you, districts, you know, assume they have about 300 applications or pieces of content or vendors on their network, and it's probably more like 700. And that's not because of any nefarious plan. It's because people are trying to use new technology to achieve their goals, and we're just not aware of everything that's on that laptop or on that computer. And we don't have a way to make sure every great K-12 startup, all the way down to Microsoft and Google, are dumping all of their data back to a single place that you can do something with. So I was laughing because it's a really big challenge.
Yeah, I do, Natasha. I do think you're going to see more public initiatives around the aggregation of data. I think the IES is, you know, considering some initiatives, which is a research arm of the Department of Education, and also you know, Schmidt Futures organization is thinking about some initiatives around data aggregation as well. So I do think you're going to be hearing a lot more around this, and we're already participating in a number of these conversations, and also the recipient of some grant dollars to help improve this access. So I'm a little bit more optimistic on this. You know, I think defining exactly what data will be useful is going to be the bigger challenge, and you know, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And I'm actually motivated to hear Joy, Brian, and Barry speak, because one of my major quandaries that I see, just not at the micro level here in Middletown, but macro, is that there's disparate applications where there's very limited API or connectivity between these systems. Moreover, there's really no true ability with the limited data that we have to start concatenating specific data sets so that we can draw in, whether it be broader data sets, and really start getting into it from the supervised context, right? Developing these level of algorithms to have a true understanding of our systems, the structures, and our students and where they're at. So, you know, when I hear this actually gets me motivated, and that there is possibility, because Brian is absolutely correct. You know, we're pulling from so many areas. There's not one platform that has this level of connectivity in it. So data is going to be critical, but moreover, the need for more data, especially now in this digital penetration world that COVID has created.
So, I mean, do we feel like we're moving closer toward a world where it's not that we need more innovation or more fancy tools within AI, but we really need buy-in? That seems like the biggest hurdle for AI going forward, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we were forced to. And I'm sorry I jumped into this because, you know, I always said that there's there was a small incubators of superintendents who really thought about this, talked about this, really get excited. And then we go back to these traditionally structured schools that are more supply-based or a value chain. But now COVID has created this, where now AI has to be a part of the organizational thread. Analytics and design thinking has to be a part of the organizational structures because you have to be lean and agile simultaneously.
Enjoyed. Have anything to add there?
Yes, I think if we can get more people understand technologies and AI technologies, I think it will make it much better, especially not only parents, we mentioned parents, maybe they don't know much, but especially educators and teachers. I often heard a question asking like, do you think AI technologies or machines will replace teachers' job, teachers' role? Actually, I think we need to explain to them in a better way, or Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we need to get more educators, teachers to better understand AI, understand technology, and also prove to them how AI technologies can make learning more engaging, make personalized, more effective, so that they can embrace technology more. I think when teachers become, or educators, more educators become the big adopters and ambassadors for the AI technologies or any other technologies, when they know how to use the technologies and are more willing to use the technologies, I think they will help us further accelerate AI and all the other technologies.
Thank you all so much. I feel hopeful and it feels a little bit more like less of a black box. So I appreciate your time. I think that's all we have for today. So thank you again. The future of AI is optimistic and hopefully more inclusive going forward. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you, everybody.
Alrighty, bye.